Hi, welcome to another episode of CEO Open Mic. Today we are hosting Dolan Beuthin, whose experience is not really calculated in years, but it's actually calculated in decades. Dolan's been founder of a few companies. He's living in South Africa, which makes it super interesting for us, but his insight is truly globally. Hi, Dolan. Nice to have you.
Hi, Bartek. How are you?
Not bad at
Good,
all.
good day, or where you are, good day. To me, it's good evening. To your team,
That's true.
and
We are.
yeah, you're a long way behind me. I'm excited to hopefully be able to make the podcast or the discussion interesting for your viewers, for our viewers, and hopefully I can bring some stories to them over the years and some advice and some happenings and goings on that I've an experience that I've been through since I was extremely young. I'd rather not say how long it's been. It has been a long, long time in the industry and in all the time in the gambling industry, in the gambling space, from literally casinos all the way through to horse racing, to sports betting, to poker, to all sorts of things, to bridge, to any form of gambling. Honestly,
Let's speak about that.
let's hope we can interest your listeners.
Oh, definitely. Your insight. We've been talking before recording that episode, and your insight and your experience is truly amazing. So let's give a little bit of insight about that. So, what are the names of the companies that you're running right now, that you founded in recent times, and what do they do?
At the moment, myself and a few other guys that I've known literally since childhood, we have a company called iGaming Experts, which is on the internet as igamingexperts.com. So without the E, igamingexperts.com. And that is a consultancy business and advisory in the software, in the regulatory, all sorts of spaces in the gambling industry, literally from Africa to Latin America to Europe, but mainly grey markets, and specifically more so in the advising new operators or assisting operators who presently in the industry and are battling to get traction, or battling with software, or having issues with understanding certain regulations and marketing and all sorts of things like that. Our entire team is able to assist and hopefully increase their bottom line and increase their revenue and assist them, because believe me, it's not an easy industry. Honestly, I believe it's probably for the average investor, and it's been proven. I mean, I'm sure you're aware what America's been like. It's really been tough, and it's for the average investor. It's a nightmare to. They think it's an easy industry to get into, but it's a complicated, very difficult to understand. It's a niche. It's a niche industry. I don't think what I understand about the industry. Honestly, I don't think there's 4 or 5 of us left alive who understand it. That's the truth. If I spoke about anyone, it would probably be somebody like Ralph Topping from William Hill, who I do know. Guys like him, partners of mine, Jonathan Parton in South Africa, who's by profession a chartered accountant. So what do they call them in America? CPA, or certified professional accountant, auditor. And the industry doesn't unfortunately allow for mistakes or errors. You get punished for your errors. The industry is evolving very fast, and it's technically driven. So I was also involved in, or still am, in betting sites which are in the, let's call in the African space, like Best Bet 360 and jacarandacasino.com. And there was a site up which we were facing Latin America and grey markets with, called Bet Monster. But it is at the moment we're in the phase of relaunching it with a new, which I'd rather not discuss, a new license, which is far more tax efficient than some of the remote gaming licenses out there. I'm sure if anybody understands it who's listening to us will understand that the world is becoming more and more difficult to run or to operate remote gaming licenses like Malta and Isle of Man and Curacao and the Canadian Reserve one that escapes me for the moment, Kanawaki or something. I can't remember the name exactly. They also issue remote gaming licenses. It's a tribal license, but the issue is that the world is trying to tighten up and sort of regulate it more, the industry, and with that comes higher taxation, all sorts of issues that happen in the industry, and it leads to lower revenues, honestly. And all that happens, truthfully, is the punters or the players, for want of a better word, go black market or go underground. And it's not a solution, honestly. I've always said that to governments, to regulators, rather be fair with the operators and be fair with the players, and open up the industry, and don't overtax, don't kill the industry, because the minute you kill the industry from a tax point of view or regulatory point of view, all that happens is it sort of becomes illegal. I mean, that's when everybody makes money. When drugs are illegal, when alcohol is illegal, when porn is illegal, when sex is illegal, when gambling is illegal, they make more money. They don't make less money. The operators or the industry makes more money. So, they tried it in South Africa in 2000, I think, so 25 years ago. they tried to, and I mean, South Africa is an extremely mature. I mean, we had licensing and understood the industry for close on 100 years, but they tried to increase the tax overnight, literally, on for the operators and the punters, the players, and all that happened was literally everything went underground, and the tax collected actually just reduced by 80%. So there was nothing being declared, and it lasted maximum, I think it was about 2 years, and the government went back to all the bookmakers and operators on their knees and begged them, how do we solve this mess? And they reduced that literally by 100%, by 50%, from 14% back to 6.5%, and the tax collected jumped sky high because everybody, it wasn't worth their while trying to operate illegally and trying to hide the taxation. So everything came out in the open again, and the tax collected was astronomical. The industry grew, it exploded. So look, I've been involved literally from a little boy. From my love or my beginnings started in the horse racing industry, because people don't understand sports betting is actually quite a new phenomenon throughout the world. It's not something that's gone on for a long, long time. It's not. People may think so, but it's not really, especially not legal in any case, especially not legalized. And we used to bet, which was legal all over the world. We used to bet on horse racing. So, I mean, I'm going back to the 70s, 80s, 90s. Sport wasn't even legal to bet on because, again, they were concerned, the authorities and the governments and everybody, that it would lead to, sort of, I don't know, they're still concerned, I suppose, to integrity issues and whatever in the sports industry. But with the huge money that's there today in the sports industry, I don't even believe for a minute that anything at the higher level there's any corruption. It's not possible. I mean, the players in all the sports earn far too much money to risk a miserable bet or something for their in any sports environment. So we used to bet on horse racing, and obviously, I mean, there was. I mean, many years ago there was corruption. Of course, there was. I mean, it wasn't difficult to know that, but I don't believe the corruption, truthfully, was blatant or out in the open. I think the corruption that people think there was, or the graft, if you know what the word means, the graft was definitely not intended to be corrupt as such and whatever. It was just sort of inside information and people knowing a bit more or having privileged information, things like that. I hate to ramble on. I mean, but we can go back to the cricket issues, which is, my God, it's 1997, 98, 99, 2000. I can't remember, with Hansie Cronje, the South African cricket captain. And I mean, the poor guy, he paid dearly. I mean, he was a legend as far as cricket's concerned. He died, unfortunately, in a horrific air crash, private aeroplane. But I mean, he was dragged before commissions of inquiry. He was stripped of his captaincy. It was terrible what went on. And truthfully, I don't believe to this day. I mean, I didn't know him personally, but I knew people who had dealings with him in the industry. And I don't believe for a minute that he benefited as such, in any case, benefited enough or financially. But he was unaware, and I mean, it's a long time ago, nearly 30 years ago, he was unaware of how vital that information was that he was giving to, let's say, a bookmaker or a punter or a player or somebody in the, who was having a monetary interest in the game of cricket. But it was vital. Television was very, it definitely wasn't what it is today. So a cricket game would start. I mean, it went on with basketball, baseball. It went on with anything, tennis, anything. But the guy, all he would do, perhaps, was somebody befriended him, and he thought the person's his friend, and we'll have a chat on mobile telecommunication had just started, and he'd be in India, or he'd be in England, or he'd be in Pakistan, or he'd be whatever, playing a one-day or a test match. And it was vital to know who'd won the toss. So who was going to bat first? Who was going to bowl first? What did the pitch look like? I mean, it was terrible. I mean, if you knew what the pitch looked like, you already had an advantage over anybody else. The odds would sway critically. It's in the old days also. The football, so being European soccer, not American football, nobody knew 20, 30 years ago which team was actually coming out to play that match on a Saturday in the Premier League until perhaps, a few minutes before the team came out. And if you had that information a day before, it could sway at 20% in terms of odds or in terms of the market. And that information was vital. So I don't think there was as such that people think it was blatant theft or graft or crooking or stealing from people, or meant to, it was a certainty and this and that. There's no certainty in life. I've got news for everybody. There's no certainties. I've got terrible news for everybody. It's a certainty. There are no certainties. But they believed, at least with that, you had an advantage. So that for a professional or somebody with understanding odds and of statistics and whatever, it put them at an advantage. And the I think the industry today is just far too quick and far too technical. Truthfully, there's absolutely no chance. I don't care if it's horse racing, if it's tennis, if it's cricket, if it's soccer, if it's basketball, in any decent league, major league or major sporting event. So obviously in the tiny stuffs, if you're going to go and look at, I don't want to mention countries, but if you're going to look at minor leagues and table tennis or basketball or soccer for that matter in the third divisions and the fourth, of course, funny things can go on. But believe you me, in anything major, in tennis, rugby, soccer, there's no chance. It just can't happen. There's too much television coverage. There's too much exposure. There's too many journalists. There's just too much there are too many eyes on the subject and on the game. So I mean, there's no chance of something happening today. I mean, in football or soccer or rugby or anything, you can't even move your finger without a television camera picking it up. So I mean, you've got no chance of doing something. And there's no player that is of any decent standard in any sport who's going to risk his entire life and his entire earnings the rest of his life on a bet or on doing something crooked. Same as horse racing. There's absolutely no chance. Sure, they may give some information to somebody, but that doesn't make it like that the result is set in stone. I mean, anybody who believes that's stupid. There's no chance. They may know the horse, it's a bit worked well during the week, or the horse, it didn't eat today or whatever, things like that. But do me a favor to think that at higher levels there's anything funny going on. They're living in dreamland. There's no chance. There's too many people with providing odds, data feeds, statistics. The minute there's just a movement on in the betting industry, just a movement that affects the entire internet in a matter of a split second. So I mean, you can't the punter or the person trying to do something corrupt can't even place their money. Those days are long gone. I mean, it's too technical today. So the industry is phenomenal the way it's evolved. Truthfully, I mean, from a paper or telephone or slow moving industry to what it is, and cash, mainly cash. Just that there's hardly any cash left in the industry, no matter what everybody. Sure, they keep trying to find ways, I'm sure, of laundering, call it whatever you want, money, and try to do things. But the people in the industry, the providers and the license holders and the operators and the game providers, they've just got far too much to lose. The industry, I believe, says as clean as any industry in the world. It's cleaner than most. There's nothing to hide, and it's an exciting industry. Truthfully, very exciting.
It is exciting. And so, from the perspective of what journey did the industry do from, I don't want to call them ancient times, but from the old days to the point where we are right now, what's your bet? I mean, I want to become a new operator, and I'm trying to find the best market for me in terms of revenue, in terms of regulatory stuff. Would you say the market is full now, or is there still any
No.
space to make business?
I think there are still plenty regions and territories that are open for business, for good business. There are still a lot of unregulated environments that are obviously huge opportunities, because if you're the first mover, I go back to Nigeria. I went to Nigeria when they had nothing in 2009. I mean, it was unheard of, to have any computerized sort of betting system or anything. I was able to sort of really infiltrate it, and it was sort of easy money, to be honest. And I still think there's a lot like that. There's certain countries in Africa that are definitely still growing at mad, insane rates. I mean, truthfully, 50, 60, 70% a year, they're growing. And it's not going to change, because as you educate a market or educate the people and it becomes more mature, it just keeps growing. The problem is when you try and deal with a mature market, it's the same as banking, I suppose, or investments or anything. It's very hard to get a return on your money in a stable or a mature market like Switzerland or America or UK or you're going to battle to get a return on your money, because whatever you're thinking of doing in those countries has already been done, with all due respect. So, unless you come up with new ideas, you're going to battle. I mean, the UK gambling market is old. It's not going to grow. It might grow at a couple of percent, but there's no way it can see growth at 50% or 40%. Same as, perhaps Scotland and Australia and, uh, just trying to think. But there's huge growth in markets that are still as such new and untapped. I think there's still a lot of school fees to be paid in America, in the USA. I think there's a lot of pain still to come, and I take terrible pain for the operators. And the proof's there. I mean, whoever's gone in there, and I'm talking about the biggest in the world, Bet365, they've been hurt. They have honestly been hurt. But I mean, that's a technical discussion. That's not a turnover or a volume discussion, because the volume is there and the turnover is there. but I don't want to get into why. I mean, there's a lot of issues tax-wise. There's a lot of issues regulatory-wise. I think they've got a lot to learn from government level, federal level, from the Fed right down to the states. They honestly have a lot to learn. And unfortunately, they're going to pay school fees. The operators are going to pay school fees. The various regulatory authorities in each state are going to pay school fees. And everyone's going to pay school fees. And until they learn the correct way to do it and the right way, and they listen to the rest of the world, which I doubt they're going to do, they're going to keep losing their money. People there, they're going to continue to lose money. So, I mean, Barstool Sports, what was it? It's something insane on the weekend I was reading. I think they sold it to, I'm trying to think which gambling group, DraftKings or FanDuel, one of the, they sold it to them for $500 million. The owner bought it back for $1. $1. A year later, I mean, that can only happen in the USA. How can you buy it back for $1? And the proof is that whoever bought it, I've got no idea why they bought it. So maybe they've got their reasons, but it never worked. But it's a hell of an expensive mistake. So, but Latin America, if they get the regulations right, again, if they get the regulations right, and if they understand they've got to get it clean and not corrupt, and they've got to tax it correctly. The most important thing, as I've told people, I was supposed to be at US in London next week and speaking on some panels and moderating a few discussions, but unfortunately I'm just too tied up here. But, my advice to them was, one of the biggest issues, be it Latin America and Africa, the biggest issue that everybody's going to face is trust. First of all, trusting both the regulators, the governments, and the operators. And secondly, is that the regulators or the government or the authorities don't get carried away in terms of taxation and don't keep chopping and changing their laws and their rules. And the problem is, as the government or the regulatory boards and the gambling boards see how much profit, let's call it, they think that the operator is making, or that the punter is, or the players are putting into the industry, straight away they up the taxes, they increase them. Now, that's not a solution. You should just let the industry grow organically, let it grow, and the tax will grow anyway. But by throttling it and changing the tax rules and regulations overnight, all that does is it scares off the operators and the investors, and it scares the players and the punters, and the industry dies. And funnily enough, I've been looking at it carefully the last few weeks because I'm busy with a huge project in South Africa. And I've been looking at it in Africa. And there are countries that were gold mines, let's call it, for the betting industry. And the government has killed them off. They've killed them. I noticed Ghana. I mean, it's reduced year on year. So December 22 to December 23, it actually dropped like 70%, the GGR. Now, and the hits, the traffic to gambling websites. Now, that's as a result of them looking to change the taxation and the rules and the laws for operators. Now, if they can't see it, the government or the tax authorities or the regulatory board or the gambling board, then they've got a huge problem that they can't see they've killed the industry. So either one of two things. Either they've got to understand we're doing the wrong thing and we need to change our mindset and we need to change the way we're looking at the industry and the taxation and the regulation, or we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to ban gambling, because that's the simpler thing. It's just, instead of kidding the public that we don't mind if you gamble and it's legal, all they really should do, same as Kenya, same as Uganda, is just be honest, say we want to ban it, because the taxation is so high that it's impossible for an operator to actually show a profit. So the business just dies. Same as New York. I see now they're looking at legalizing online casino, which, I mean, it should have been done 25 years ago, but anyway. So that now they're looking at legalizing that. But I mean, you cannot possibly charge 50% tax on betting on winnings for the operator. It's not feasible. I mean, it is just not feasible. Anything past 15, 18, 13, South Africa, remote gambling licenses bounce between 5 and 8% for tax payable on profit, on gross profit, from the operator's point of view, to the government or to the regulatory board. But I mean, when you look at 50%, whoever agreed to that, they should have rather said, we're not legalizing gambling in New York. It would have been a simpler answer, and it would have been a more honest answer, truthfully. But the operators like DraftKings and who lined up to pay $50 million for a license and this and that, I've got no idea who advised them that was a good idea. I still can't believe it, because if they'd just done a simple spreadsheet and been to some providers and had a look at it, well, the providers don't really care. The providers still get their money, so they don't care if the tax is 100%. The providers take their profit first. So the sportsbook providers don't care, the casino providers don't care, the odds feed providers don't care, the virtual game providers don't care. They get their money first. So, but I mean, whoever thought it was a good idea, whichever accountant or investor or a venture capitalist firm or a public company thought it was a good idea to get a betting license and pay 50% betting tax. I've got no idea who advised them. I mean, to me, it's just unbelievable. It's like trying to make 1+1 = 5. It's not going to happen. The more they try, and then they've got the audacity to say turnover is growing. I've got news for them. The more the turnover grows, the worse the bottom line is going to get. That's all that's going to happen. And it's happened to an African operator that a listed company paid billions of dollars for it. It has never, ever shown a profit in 6 years. And the more that they grew the gross profit, the worse the bottom line got, because they worked out that to grow that gross profit was actually costing more than it was worth. It was killing them. And I don't know, they're still in operation. Well, that's what happens with public companies. They're just carrying on pouring the money in. But I can't see any way out for them, because it's such a giant now that they either just going to have to close it up and write off the money that they've invested and call it a day. But honestly, all these huge public company operations in the industry, they don't show close to the profit that all the niche, privately owned, agile, clever, fast-moving, fast-changing operations do. I mean, the biggest operation by a country mile is Bet365. I mean, honestly, I don't think there are 3 shareholders or 4 shareholders. And the majority is held by one person, the woman, the owner, Denise Coates. Why? Because she can make decisions quickly. They make decisions fast. There's not, public company. They're not 40 directors. It's not so. They move fast in the industry. And that's the issue. This industry, it moves very fast and very quickly. And I think that they've got very confused in the US about land-based and Nevada or Las Vegas, and they misunderstood that the majority of sports books in Nevada or in Las Vegas were purely an add-on to the land-based casino. And honestly, I don't think they made huge profits. Not what the tax results or the tax reports show anyway. They didn't really make huge profits. So, I think people got all so excited about turnover. Sure, it's huge, the turnover, but it is not casino. Turnover on sport, it's like, spreadsheets. I always say spreadsheets are for masturbation. I've never seen a bad spreadsheet in my life. When somebody's looking for an investor, nobody's going to give you a bad presentation or forecast. It's the same thing. The turnover, of course, the turnover is going to be huge, but turnover, it's not Best Buy or Amazon. Turnover does not automatically relate to profit in the gambling industry in sports betting. So we're not talking about casino. Of course, it does in casino, but that's what they believed, and they misunderstood. And they have never ever, except a couple of states, allowed online gambling as such, casino, virtual games, instant games, all sorts of things that are the huge drivers of profit in the world, not sports betting. Sports betting is a risky business, and I don't think the Americans were careful enough to understand that without all those other products, purely one product, sports betting. Honestly, it's no great shakes to have a sports betting license. South Africa exploded after they allowed or legalized, online sort of gambling, casino, online virtual gambling, online, all sorts of online and retail for that matter, products. But I mean, the rest of the world revolves around the other products. I don't think sports betting accounts for, honestly, 30% of the world's profit in gambling. It's casino and virtual gambling and poker, and it's other products that are sort of drivers of the turnover in the sport. And by the same token, the guy who's gone there for a sports bet, they drive him from there, they move him to the casino book. But they definitely don't want that player stuck in the sports betting industry. I mean, those days are long gone. In the European world or the Latin world or the Canadian or the South African or African, there's no way you can get huge bets anymore on sports betting. No chance. Bookmakers they're not there for their ego. They're there for profit. So, the margins are so tight. They're not going to allow you to just place astronomical amounts of bets on a game of football or tennis or rugby. There's no way. Those days are long gone. They're there for profit, not for ego. And you want to bet on casino? Pleasure. Go and have whatever you want. Whatever the rules are, you and I know, those are set by research and development. There's billions of dollars gone into the R&D of that game. So, they don't even worry about it. They just close their eyes, the operator, and allow the player to bet, because the rules take care of themselves, just like a casino. So they don't kick you out of casinos today, or kick you. That's many years ago. They don't kick you out today. They've got decks that are being shuffled non-stop on the blackjack table. You literally have no chance going to go and play blackjack in the casino. You have zero chance. In the old days, I mean, we could card count, or you could try to do something. So they're going back 10 and 20 and 30 years when they tell you I was banned from a casino. How can you get banned today? There's no possible way that you can you can be cleverer unless you're cheating with somebody. You can't be cleverer than the automated machine that's shuffling your deck of cards. It's impossible. So the days for, I think it's become much more recreational for the player. And unfortunately, they need to understand their players and punters and get away from the fact, sure, they're going to be winners. There are lots of winners, but it's more now, hopefully, an enjoyable space and a relaxation and an escape from reality and fun. And I think that's where it's got to head, the industry, to keep it strong and alive and get bigger and bigger and bigger than, only the people in the know, or only the people with inside knowledge, or only the clever people, or only the, like, old time gamblers have a chance. Those days are all long gone. You don't hear about anybody in the last 5 years who's managed to outdo a casino. It's not possible, with all due respect. There's cameras all over the place. There's people watching. It's just too technical. It is far too technical. So it's a great industry that people need to understand now is a, how can I put it, is a form of entertainment. It's definitely not any longer where you can put yourself in a position where you are stronger than somebody else and you have the odds in your favor. Of course you can with sports betting, because bookmakers make mistakes and they may create odds that are not perfectly correct, especially on a Monday for a Sunday game. If you're clever, you're going to, the professional punter is still going to be able to beat the odds, maybe. Okay. But it's a matter of, now he's got to be really professional to spread his bets around, to be able to get those bets on, to be able to place the money on the bet, things like that. But as for winning, of course there are winners in the online casino space. Of course there are winners in the poker space. But I mean, as a rule, there's not going to be. But the margins are tiny for the operator. We all know that 2 and 3 and 4%. It's not huge margins. We're not talking about margins of 50 and 60%. Margins are small, but the turnover is huge. And I think that's where people's egos and operators' egos got in their way in sort of the American scenario of turnover. And they were paying for ridiculous amounts for marketing. They were buying players. They were bonusing ridiculous bonuses up front to get players to register to bet. And eventually, I mean, it caught up with them. The bonusing caught up with them. The marketing caught up with them. And I think the strong will survive and the giants will be around. And slowly the smaller operators will disappear. And they may then all come to their senses that we've got to relook at this whole model to get it profitable. Because, I mean, it's been 4 or 5 years. It's madness. It should literally make money at the jump. It shouldn't be a case of losses all the time. It doesn't make any sense. So I think they're going to speak to government and slowly beg them, or to the states, to be allowed to do casino or virtuals or things like that. And slowly, I think they'll get it right. How they'll ever get certain states like New York right, where they just agreed to ridiculous tax rates. So if they get them to reduce it from 50 to 40%, it's still not viable. So I don't know what they're ever going to do in those sort of circumstances. But the interesting places to look at definitely are, I mean, tiny places like Guyana in South America. I mean, their GDP, because they found oil and gas 4 years ago, has grown at over 100% a year for the last 3 years, their GDP. So the average person's earnings has exploded. So what's happened? All the gambling operators have run there and set up operations in Guyana with only 900,000 inhabitants, only 900,000 people. But it's going to be huge. It is huge because, okay, it's old style. It's mainly retail and, sort of small shops, small retail operations, but 5,000 shops or whatever. So, it's convenience shopping, this convenience betting. It's not the online situation, but it's huge. It's getting, in terms of that, there's only 900,000 people. It's massive. Same as Mexico. The most traffic in the entire world in the gambling industry comes out of Mexico. It's the highest traffic in the world by a long, long, long way per capita, by a country mile. It is so big. And I don't think it'll ever change. Why? Again, because it's driven by poverty. It's driven by the same as Brazil, same as Argentina, same as El Salvador, same as Costa Rica. I mean, not Costa Rica, Colombia. All those places are driven sort of similar to Africa and, African countries. It's driven by a need or a desire and a desperate situation for the average person to try and improve his life. So he looks at it, that player, that punter looks at their betting or their gambling as really a means or an opportunity to turn a little into a lot by miracle. So they look at betting as a lottery almost all the time. They don't look at it like the Western world or like Europe, where they will have €1,000 on a game of football or whatever. No chance. They will take €1 and put it on 20 combinations and try and turn that into €10,000. That's what they're doing. And obviously, every now and then they catch it right. They do. I mean, they're huge payouts, huge in South Africa, huge. $1 million on a payout from a $10 bet. But I mean, of course, they're few and far between. But it does happen. I mean, these guys, it happens, and then that's what keeps the industry alive or keeps the operation alive, because the punter and the players honestly believe they have a chance. And of course they have a chance. But it's better than these huge bets where the punter or the player and the country, the average human, is getting hurt. They're not really getting hurt in Africa or Latin America. Those guys, you'll never hear them moaning, or you'll never hear about problem gambling. Truthfully, never, because they're not staking or outlaying huge sums of money on one bet or on one game. It's not like that in these poorer countries, or smaller earnings. And it's really interesting to see the games and the products that work in these countries compared to what works and is successful in European countries. It's a totally different mindset, I promise you. From what games interest them to what games interest a European player, say. Even in the casino space, the sports betting space, it's amazing. I mean, really, the rest of the world, I think, conservatively, soccer, football, bar America, makes up probably well over 90% of all the bets in the industry, in the sports betting industry. 90%. And that's being conservative. It's probably higher. And that's the truth. Everyone's watching one thing or betting on one thing: football, soccer. But if you look at the American market, there's exactly, I'm not kidding, if you look at the reports, the tax report, there's exactly the four sports. That's it: basketball, American football, baseball, and ice hockey. And of that, NFL makes up 70%, 80%. There's nothing else they bet on. Basketball's still small compared. That's it. Nothing else. There's not even 1 or 2% that's bet on, say, out of the 100 on boxing or European football or tennis or MMA. It's nothing. It is so small. It doesn't even affect those four sports. So betting on only four sports is really tough for an operator. And where all those four sports, which I have explained to people, but it's difficult to understand, all those four sports in America only have a yes/no result. They all have only two outcomes. They never have a third outcome. So, the big thing with football is it has three outcomes: win, draw, and home. I mean, win, home, draw, and away. So there's three outcomes. There's a huge, massive, thing in the favor, odds in the favor of the operator. Even though the margin is still the same, at least every now and then, the operator or the betting, company gets a spook or a result in their favor. But I mean, if you're only betting on two outcomes and you're betting on the flip of a coin constantly, heads or tails, it's really bloody difficult to get it right as the operator, because when you make a mistake, there's no margin for error. You can't move the odds around either. You cannot change those odds. It's just too difficult. If you move those odds 1 millimeter, 1 percentage point, you're already in trouble now with the punter. He's just going to back the other team as well now. So this two outcome sort of betting it's a constant worry for operators, and I honestly don't think they understood that. I swear, it's like having a roulette table without a zero in it. That's the truth. That's exactly what the problem is. So even if that zero only pops up 1 in 33 times, it still helps you as the operator. But they haven't got any zero popping up for them ever. They've got no zero, so they've got no draw popping up for them. They've got nothing helping them out to sort of have something in their favor and something to play with in the margins.
So from what you said, I believe that half of the audience that's listening to us is already looking at African or Latin American markets like a promised land a little bit, not overly regulated, not overly taxed. Of course, There are some drawbacks, as you said, like, changing the law overnight.
Yeah, they can change the laws tomorrow.
Yeah, obviously, of course. But would you share, I'd love to pick your brain on the reality of running the business in Africa. Like, regulatory thing is one thing, but say, let's picture a situation. I'm a casino operator in Europe. I'm pretty successful. I'm looking at the other markets. My finger just landed on a map somewhere in Africa, let's say South Africa. So what's the reality? How about safety? How about, hiring people? How about, you name it?
Okay, so Bartek, honestly, I think, it's like anything in life. I think that people, the media or the news or the bad publicity, they talk a lot of nonsense. I mean, you Polish, I've explained to you before, I think it's the greatest place in the world. I loved it when I was in Poland a few times. I absolutely love Poland. So you'll then get people saying X, Y, Z about Poland. You'll get people saying whatever about Greece. You'll get them saying it about the UK. You'll get them saying about the USA, about Mexico. I say you've got to get off off your chair and go yourself, go find out the truth, and understand that every country has its problems. Doesn't matter which country. Okay, obviously there's certain countries. Would I venture into Equatorial Guinea? Like I see people going there, for oil, to go and work on oil rigs or to assist technically. And I'm talking about South Africans too, going there to help them and to try and do stuff in Equatorial. Not a damn. I wouldn't put my foot in Equatorial Guinea if they offered me $100,000 a day to come. But you've got to do some homework. You must understand these aren't easy places to go and live in or do business. But the whole world, is growing and changing and trying desperately to get investment, into their countries. With all due respect, they're not trying to chase people away. They need investment. So I mean, if you went to the news or you went reading, they would tell you, oh my God, don't go near, South Africa. It's so dangerous. I mean, people talk such nonsense. I mean, it's the same, believe you me, as being here or being in London or being in New York or being in any big city. If you're in Johannesburg, okay, they talk out the nonsense. There's no danger. Everything works perfectly. I mean, it's a first world city. Everything works. Nigeria, they'll also tell you, oh my God, be careful. Don't go here, don't go there. Yeah, you also wouldn't go into dangerous areas in New York or in London at 12 at night or at midnight. But I mean, Nigeria was a great experience. I was in and out of there for 10 years. I had homes there. I had businesses. It was magnificent. Ghana was magnificent. Kenya's magnificent. Uganda's great. Tanzania's phenomenal. Mozambique's amazing. Yeah, okay, Congo's a little bit, dicey, a little bit careful. And the most important thing about Africa is one thing. You better find yourself, which isn't easy, local partners and local people who know their way around, okay, which is very difficult for European, guys to do, or Americans, or they really battle. I tell you who survives in Africa, seriously, the Eastern Europeans make a fortune. The Greeks, the Indians, the Chinese, let me think, the Asians. So even, I can buy anybody. Other than that, they're going to battle to come to Africa, if you know what I mean, because they're used to a much easier way of life, let's say. Polish people aren't, they're used to it tough. But I mean, I wouldn't say that you come from Britain and you come to Nigeria, you're going to find it easy, or you come to Congo, you're not going to find it easy. But Congo, Greeks, they're a dime a dozen, Portuguese, even Spanish. There's lots of Spanish people, a lot of Indians, a lot of Chinese, a lot of Eastern Europeans, they're all there. Ukrainians, Russians, sure, because they're used to, life not being that easy. Same with Latin America. You're not going to go to Brazil, to Sao Paulo, and think, you're in Dubai. You're not. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to force your way through customs, through the airports, through the traffic, it's not an easy place. But it's the age-old story. It's high risk, high reward. You're going to go to these countries, and you're not talking about investing, $100 million. You're going to be able to perhaps invest $1 million and get a return on your money in a year. That's the reality of all these opportunities. They're huge opportunities. There's ridiculous rates, of return on investment. And I think the most important thing is to be very careful who you ask for advice and who you consult with and who you listen to, from a legal point of view and from a operational point of view, from a software point of view. It's extremely important that you need somebody who can explain to you what's needed in those countries. And again, to get it, now that I'm thinking out loud, the Israelis as well. I mean, they understand Africa. They understand Latin America. They're tough. The Polish companies made a fortune in Africa in gambling. I'm talking about from a provider software point of view. They understood it quickly. The Italians understood it quickly. But, the British didn't. The UK companies that came here closed up quickly. They didn't understand what was needed from a software point of view. So forget about regulatory. They didn't get the business like strategy. They just didn't get it. And, they were, perhaps you need to be careful not to be impressed by certain locals and stories of grandeur and don't worry, it's easy. And it's not. You need to be very careful who you partner with, and you need to be very wary of the advice you get, and it needs to be somebody who's had their feet on the ground and they've risked their own money already, or they've had their own money involved in those countries. So I paid the school fees in lots of these countries, so I learned the hard way. But I'd come from South Africa, so it wasn't impossible for me to understand Africa. Same as even when I went into Latin America, I understood very quickly that when you were dealing with a Brazilian or a Mexican or whatever, you're dealing with somebody fighting for their life. They it's not going to be some quiet, well-mannered British guy, American, sorry, sir, okay, sir. They're fighting for their money. I mean, they're desperate when they're gambling. They're looking for winnings, So you need to be sharp. You need to be very, very, very on the ball. You better not make mistakes in these countries or these industries. And other than that, I think that the governments are learning fast, very fast, in terms of regulations and tax. And I'll tell you what, a lot faster than a few other countries that I don't want to mention. They're not stupid. They've learned. So they listen. and they have got on with it. They've realized, we need to tax it sort of this way. We need to regulate it this way. They've learned from their mistakes, and they realize it's a huge earner for them as a tax earner and a regulatory earner. So they're not going to go and kill the golden goose. Why must they? So I would still say there's huge opportunity. The francophone countries like Ivory Coast and Tunisia and Morocco and Algeria, and as much as people may think, it's Muslim, it's still, there's huge gambling going on in these countries, and slowly they're going to regulate it, and they're busy regulating, and they're busy changing laws. I went to Congo 8 years ago, DRC. Sure, it was wild then, and things, but they're learning fast. They at all the shows, they go to all the conferences, they go to us, they come here, they're learning because they want to tax it. Governments need tax. Governments need to collect tax. So they need to find a way to tax this industry. Otherwise, it was all happening right under their nose, but illegally, and they weren't collecting the tax. So I think that the people need to do their homework, the investors or the operators, whoever wants to come here, to Africa or to Latin America for that matter, and they need to do their homework, and they need to find providers who have made a success. So software providers, game providers, I said, who've made a success in those regions, and they need to stay away from the huge sort of providers that tell you, we're so big in Europe, we're huge in America, we're massive in it. It makes no difference in these countries. Your software is not going to work, and your business strategy isn't going to work. So you need to, unfortunately, get uncomfortable, get in an airplane and go there yourself. And you need to search the internet and be very careful who you turn to on LinkedIn or on gambling conferences. You need to be very careful who you listen to and who you believe. It's no point in talking to somebody who hasn't paid their school fees or invested their own money and burnt their own fingers, sort of thing. So, there are lots of people at all these conferences. It's life, right? If I'm going to be honest on the show. I mean, 90% of them are there to sell themselves and, get money out of it. They're just there to talk nonsense, and that's why I hardly partake in these things any longer, because it's not why I'm there. If I go there and I'm talking, I'm going to tell the truth about whichever country or government or industry or product or provider or software or regulatory board, and I think they're learning the hard way. Like I told you, Ghana's going to have to learn the hard way. It was a gold mine 10 years ago, and it's dying, which makes no sense. It doesn't make sense. So it's not the population that's changed or the money or the financial. There's something wrong at regulatory level. There's something that's killing the industry. Same as Kenya. Because there's a new government in place, let's say, from a year or two ago. Problem is the guy is very, how can I put it? He's extremely conservative, and the government has sort of clamped down. So when they've clamped down on it, all they're doing is they're causing the industry to die. But it's better for them to just ban it. It's stupid to try and overtax it. Just ban it, rather. Ban it. But we should all know, from alcohol, from pornography, from anything in life, it doesn't help to ban it. It doesn't help. And also, sort of creating a monopoly doesn't help either. But by the same token, you cannot have a checkbook license. It needs to be a license with proper probity and proper controls in place and proper auditing and proper, checks and balances, which costs money from a regulatory point of view. But it needs to be done properly. So it's not a 10-minute, okay, fill in this form and how much are you paying? And with all due respect, that's what all remote gaming licenses are. They're checkbook licenses. They're not genuine probity and a limit on the amount of licenses. Not at all. There's no limit on the amount for Malta or Curacao or Isle of Man. It's just, if you pay the fees, you get a license. That's the bottom line, with all due respect. And, that's far from the case in South Africa. I mean, it's an application. There's absolutely zero guarantee you get a license. Nothing. As for casinos, land-based casinos got licensing applications got closed 30 years ago. They'll never be reopened ever, ever, ever again. That's it. They will never, ever open another. And they've never, ever moved premises either in the 30 years. They never, ever will. They won't allow it. So, their decision was made, and that's it, which is a correct way to approach something. They don't keep saturating the market. So, I think when they get it right, if I was a newcomer into Africa or in Latin America or whatever, I would honestly try look at, which is difficult sometimes, who is honestly, not marketing and sales talk, who's honestly made a success there, who's honestly surviving, who's really, making money in these countries. And it doesn't mean it's the giants or the huge companies. Sometimes it's these smaller companies that are agile and that are really clever guys and are tough and are a lot more savvy, and they understand these regions. And you can't do business the same way in Latin America and Africa as you would do in the UK or in the USA. It's not going to work. You need to understand that. And I think that That is why those other sort of countries or nations that I mentioned are a lot tougher, honestly, and hardy. Lebanese too. Lebanese have made millions and billions in Africa. Lebanese. Nigeria's, you got no idea, overrun by Lebanese people. Same by Israelis, by Chinese, by Indians, because they're tough, they're resilient. They can handle difficulties. But I mean, when you're used to an easy life, I mean, it's difficult to come from, you know, as much as people may think, from the UK or from Germany and then you go to Africa. It's not that easy. I got news for them. They battle. They're going to battle. So it's those type of countries that succeed in Africa. That tougher mentality, that negotiating mentality, where you negotiate for everything, you fight for everything. But I mean, are the rewards there? They're there. Me personally, I wouldn't take a license if it was offered to me in Spain recently. I wouldn't take one for free. Never mind €3 million. I wouldn't even if they said you can have it for free. I don't want one. Taxation's too high. The competitions, there's too much. Those 4 or 5 on the top of the ladder, you're never going to knock them off. You know what I mean? Same as Italy. It's the same 4 or 5. They're no newcomers for the last 10 years. You're never going to knock them off their pedestal. So how can you go there? There's no room for somebody to come in and break into the industry and make money, because those guys are just too powerful. Same as UK. I mean, who's ever going to, you're never going to compete with those 5 or 6 operators that are at the top. How? It's impossible. They've been there for 50 years. Why would you want to get a UK license for what? So, but I think that the most important thing is find the right legal guys to go to that understand it, find the right local partners financially as well, and make sure that they bring something to the table. Not a story and a promise, that there's something real that they bring to the table in all these emerging markets. They need to bring something real to the table. They'll all tell you what they can bring, but you need to see that it's real and let them bring something real beneficial to you to the table. Otherwise, rather don't do the business, truthfully, because it can't help you in the long run. Just looking because a guy tells you what he can do. You really need to check up on him. And look, there's a lot of good guys, really, honestly, good guys, hard workers. I mean, really hard. Tanzania's really made strides, huge strides. Same as small as Mozambique is tiny. I mean, they have made so much money. Some operators have gone there, and they've listened and learned. You need to adapt fast in these countries. Same as Latin America. You need to adapt fast, because if you don't adapt to their way of thinking or their way of doing business or their way of betting, you're going to die. The Europeans learned it going to America. They all failed at Bet365. It was due to America. We've lost money in America, fortune. And I don't know. I can't see it changing, truthfully. I don't know what they're chasing, because they thought that they would use their model that works in the Western world and they'd apply it to America. It's not going to work. I've got news for you. I mean, the highest trafficked betting site in the world, bar Bet365, is Caliente in Mexico. And they concentrate literally on one country, on Mexico. That's what they understand. They understand the Mexicans. They understand the territory. They understand the country. They understand the people. They concentrate on it. They're not trying to go now into England or into France. They're stuck with Spain. I mean, with Mexico. And they're quite happy. And they should be. They're quite happy with Mexico. So, to give you an example, but I did mention to Betway, South Africa, which I mean, Betway is a huge part of the super group, part of micro gaming world. Betway South Africa is probably 5 times the traffic of Betway.com. It's ridiculous. So, it doesn't make any sense, but that's the truth. They're a huge, huge operation. They are carrying the rest of their operations worldwide, financially, Betway South Africa. So, is there money or is there opportunity? Of course there is. But you better adapt yourself quickly to that country or that environment that you're in and understand them. And sometimes, unfortunately, the other guys, just the other operators or the established operations, find it very difficult to change course or adapt their software or their thinking or their strategy to another region. That's the truth. They do. They battle to change, and then they're just not going to succeed. I think it's vital that you adapt and you realize you don't know everything about that region. Get good advice, and don't think that what works in your country or your region is going to work in that territory. It may not work at all. For that matter, what works in Ghana may not work in Nigeria. And that's in terms of software as well. It might not work, So you've got to be very careful with your software and your operations team. And unfortunately, a lot of these guys have thought if they come with a big bank account and big money, they'll make a success of it. It doesn't matter. And we'll bring our European technology or our, whatever technology. And it hasn't. They've got very, very badly hurt, to be honest. And they won't admit it, but they failed. In Africa and in Latin America. That's the truth. They failed dismally. So, and I'm surprised sometimes how they carry on pouring money in and carry on with the same tech or, operational staff and marketing ideas, and they just carry on pouring the money in, So I don't know. Sometimes I sit there and scratch my head. I can't believe it, you know. And it also Africa or Latin America, I think, is similar. It's very important networking. It is so important to have the right contacts, the right people, to understand the people, to understand the territory, to understand how business is done in those environments and in those regions, and not hit your head against the wall. Don't try and change it. It's not going to work. So I go to Poland. You've got to understand the Polish people, and I will never forget that when I landed. And the main shareholder was actually a Danish guy, and he said, "Listen, you're going to have to understand my staff. They're Polish. They've had a tough time, which is the truth. I mean, you think about it. So you're going to have to understand the Polish person when you're in Poland. Same as when you're in France, you're going to have to understand the Frenchman. When you're in Italy, you're going to have to understand the Italian and their mindset. You can't go there and change it. It's not going to work. You can't go to Italy and think you're in America when you're doing business. You're not. You're in Italy. You better think like an Italian and adapt fast and be flexible. And I think that's what happens. I come to Africa, they think, you know what? It's easy there. They're behind the times. I don't know. I got news for you. The betting sites in Europe and in America wouldn't last 10 minutes in South Africa. 10 minutes. They're not competitive enough. They're not competitive odds-wise. They're not competitive product-wise. They're not competitive payment solutions-wise. And I say that with all due, they haven't got a chance in South Africa. No chance. So, they need to come here and rather see what's working and sort of understand, okay, we need to adapt. We need to change. Same as be it Nigeria. Same as, in Nigeria, they just stuck on 3 operators. Why? Because it's what they know, what they understand. The traffic is huge. They trust them. So it doesn't matter who goes there. Lots of guys have tried to go there. They haven't even made a dent in a dent. They're not even a speck, not even a 1% of the market. And they won't. They need to understand their way of marketing, their way of doing business, their way of, of betting, and then they'll make money, And it may not make sense to a European or to a foreigner, but it makes sense to the local country you're in.
Just one word that comes to my mind after everything you said: stay humble. Just stay humble.
Yeah, well, we could talk about that for hours and hours, but that's a major. I said to you that I don't mind discussing it, but I think that the world's changing very fast, and I see that in a year or two's time or whatever, they're going to start selling alcohol in Saudi Arabia, but only in the diplomatic zones, which is a huge step. It's a massive step. And I tell you, before we blink, you and I, is going to be, they've already issued and are doing it in Dubai by 2025 or 2026, I'm not sure. Wynn Resorts are opening a casino there that is 10 times the floor size, 10 times of their Las Vegas floor. So, I mean, in terms of size, it just doesn't even make sense. You're talking about huge. And what they will do is the same as what they sort of do in certain other, regions where they don't want to allow gambling. They will allow the gambling for foreigners. That's all they'll do. So it will never be for locals. End. But it's not a problem. They understand that there's a fortune to be made. This money is going outside the country. Why must they allow it? Keep it inside the country. And tax it. That's what I've always said. Same as drugs, same as anything. It's the most stupid thing in the world. They have been fighting drugs or the drug cartels for 40 years, 50 years. They have never won a war. Never. No government, not an American government, nobody has won this war. There's still billions of dollars a day being spent on drugs. What they should do is legalize it, and tomorrow the price of cocaine would go to $1 for a gram, and it'll be legal, and control it and regulate it. I don't know why they don't throughout the world. Everyone would stop using it. That's life. While it's illegal, everyone wants to do it. While a strip club's illegal, they all want to do it. When a brothel's illegal, they all want to go to the brothel. When alcohol's illegal, they all want to buy alcohol. As soon as they legalize it, everything calms down. And regulate it and let the government collect the tax. I've never understood it. Same as gambling. Regulate it properly and control it and get the tax. Finished. Do a proper job. But I think, governments and sort of conservative mindsets at times, they can't get their head around the fact they'd rather close their eyes and pretend it's not happening. But of course it's happening. It's happening everywhere. It's huge, a gambling, market in Dubai. It's huge. It's enormous. But they're not gambling in Dubai, but they're online. Of course they're gambling. They're gambling. They're not going to gamble. There's not a man who's not going to gamble. There's not a person in the world, within reason. They're not having alcohol. They're not doing this. Of course they're doing it. So rather legalize it and regulate it, which is what, any clever place does. I mean, America to this day, still the majority of the money is all going offshore and underground. Still, till now. Because they haven't regulated it correctly. They haven't allowed online casino, this. Why? Legalize it. Your money's all going out the country. You know it is. And still, they will not do it. So I don't know, if it's a conservative mindset, if it's, I don't know why. Look how long it took people to legalize, marijuana. It's insane. People have been smoking marijuana for 200 years. Why don't they just legalize it? Not that I'm a fan of it or anything or drugs, but I mean, it's stupid. If somebody's doing it and they're all doing it, do you really think by banning it that it's helping, or by making it illegal? It doesn't help. Gambling industry used to be seen as this terrible and bad, terrible place, terrible people, crooks. Are you mad? It's never been really crooked. I mean, we're not talking about 1940 in Las Vegas or 1960. It's honest. It's regulated. The taxes are paid. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that pays tax. That, you know what I mean? So rather regulate it. And you're right, boys. Stay humble when you come to Africa or Latin America. Don't think you know it all. Just stay humble and listen and learn, because it's changing fast. And you must never kid yourself or underestimate the demand or the intelligence or the requirements of that country you're going to, because you might be very shocked at how difficult it is to get the software right, and to get the technology, and to get the marketing plan and the staffing and everything right in those countries. It is not easy. And they think we'll come with this expensive tech and we know what we're doing. Doesn't mean it's even going to work, because half the population's still on old feature phones. So you're wasting your money. They're not interested in that. They want simple games, simple this, cheap. That's what they want. They don't understand it. So humble is a very, very good word.
Well, at least comparing to other markets, African market might not be easy, but still, it's growing like crazy. So
Crazy,
yeah,
crazy. Like I told you, South Africa, and I don't mind saying it because hopefully some people take note of it, and there's still space. South Africa grew at well over, for 2021 and 2022. I'm waiting for the 2023 figures. It grew at well over. I'm not talking about turnover. I'm talking about profit. I'm talking about gross gaming revenue. Well over 50% a year. It's just madness for a country where gambling or betting has been legal for 100 years. It's just unbelievable how it just keeps growing. And I can't see or how it's going to slow down, because the more products that come out, and the more within reason, it's a big population, and and it's that dream. Like I've said to you, it's that dream. So do I go and gamble? Not really. I don't believe in the dream. So yes, if I have a bet, me or you, I'm gonna have £3,000 or something, or dollars, on something that I feel there's a mistake in the odds, or they're mad. You know what I mean? Something like that. But I honestly, am I gonna mindlessly, unless it was purely for entertainment, go put $5,000 into a slot machine online? No chance. But there are lots of people who love to go put $100, but they'll be spending on a 1 cent machine. The biggest earners in the USA, in Nevada, the biggest earners in the tax reports every single month are still the penny slots, by far. I think penny slots, from memory, earn more than the rest of the gambling industry in Nevada. Penny slots. So I mean, 1, 2, 3 cent machines. But that's where everybody is. They're queuing. They're not queuing at the $50 machine, because they can't last. So they go there, with 5 cents, 10 cents, and they spin that machine all day, and eventually they leave having lost $100. But that person has no chance of winning. But they don't mind. They went there for fun. They knew they're going to lose in their heart, most of them. So they don't mind. And God forbid they win. They're so excited and happy. It brings them back for the next 15 years. So there's a big difference to what betting is, or gambling. It's not that much gambling anymore. It's a lot of entertainment. There's a hell of a lot. And we've done research on this. It cost us a fortune. There's a lot of an entertainment aspect to it. Funnily enough, even where gambling sites, in much more so in Africa and Latin America, I think, but seriously, is becoming a lot of swiping, and no more even clicking or anything. It's swipe. One of my betting sites has got it on it already now, all done. So it will pop up, whoever, man, you playing, do you want this game? If you don't even want it, like Tinder, just swipe left, it's gone off the screen. You want it, swipe right, it'll pop up. What bet you want, swipe. It puts it into your bet slip. So it's much quicker than going clicking, and it's much more intuitive and more in line with the youth's thinking. They all think scrolling on TikTok, scrolling on Instagram, scrolling on, swiping left to right. They don't know any more about us and searching and clicking. Even you too old. They just want to swipe. They just want to swipe for instant gratification and instant, access, on, off. That's it. They haven't even got time to bother to search for something. So whatever comes on their screen, they're quite happy within reason, if you know what I mean. And you'll see just now, it'll be slots. You won't click buttons. You'll see it'll be swiping. I'm telling you, that's where they're heading, all the developers. So, we don't know where this industry is going to go in terms of, if you told me that a game like Aviator made by a company that was non-existent 3 years ago, literally non-existent, made a game like Aviator Scribe, and today is probably, without a shadow of a doubt, the most successful individual game in the world. Now they've all followed, okay, and trying to make variations of it. But at the end of the day, if you told me 10 years ago we're going to play a game called Aviator with an airplane taking, you would have laughed at me. You would have laughed at me. So, we don't know for sure where it's going with virtual reality and augmented reality and things like this. I'm telling you, very soon it's going to be casinos where we're going to put our glasses on, and you and I are going to bump into each other in the whatever it's called online casino, and we'll sit at the same table and be talking to each other, talking like we talk, and playing blackjack together on the table or roulette. That's what's going to happen. Something like that, where it's going to be even more interactive, if you know what I mean, and more personal. So the guy's never going to leave the casino. I swear, he's never going to leave the casino. That's it. Or he's going to bet. You know what I mean? It's going to be more interactive with the sports betting. More interactive. Everything's going to become more deeply connected to the player, and that's technology. It strides in technology. I mean, we write everything on a piece of paper, man. We had to write things on paper, come home, balance up at night, balance the cash. Today, it's just clicks of a button. Everything is there for your records. I know exactly what Bartek is betting on. I know exactly what to target him. I know exactly what marketing to send to him. I understand exactly. It's like anything. The online, retail shops or grocery stores, they know exactly what you bought last week. They will just target you constantly to send you, specials for that. That is what specials you will get. Doesn't mean I'll get the same specials even. That's what you'll get. They know. They know your purchasing pattern. They know everything about you. Same as gambling. We know exactly what that player's do. So we're going to target him now for what he enjoys, what he wants to do, which was such a big thing, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, so special. We understood the player. We understood if he was a high roller or a small player or a bet on football. Today, we know everything about the guy. Today, it's so advanced that they know he bets on Man U. So if Man U's playing Arsenal, they won't even send him the information in regard to Arsenal. They just send him the information for Man U. They know he loves Man U. They know. So, the industry's, it's really become a lot more about entertainment. I mean, sport drives, cultures, and drives people and drives, look at how the Middle East is targeting sort of UFC. Huge, and boxing. They don't care what they pay to bring those people to Saudi Arabia, to the UAE, to Qatar, to get them to come there to partake in a boxing tournament or participate in that or participate in UFC. Think about it. They don't care what they pay, because the off spin for the public and the attendees is so huge, and for the country and the good image and the people that are there and the tourism, it far outweighs the cost of putting up the purse for a UFC fight. It means nothing to them. So the world it's all about entertainment. Everybody's looking for entertainment and escapism. That's what we found in our research, a lot of escapism. So even gambling, people think in the old days. Today, it's not even about winning or lose. It's about escaping. They will go and they'll just play on a very small scale, but it's for them to escape. That's what it is. It's for them to escape.
That's so true. That's so true. I have a feeling that we could go on for hours and hours, because I truly enjoy listening to you. But, we are running out of time. So I enjoyed a lot your insight, and thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you, Bartek.
That was Dolan Beuthin. Thank you for your time, and nice having you.
Thank you, Bartek. Thank you to your team. Thank you to Create It. Thank you very much.